These are the 4 quirks of buying a home in Houston. My name is Melanie Beran with Wyatt Properties, myhomeinhouston.com. Proud Houston native. I work all over Houston. I live here in Southeast Houston like I have my whole life. And these are some tips that you need to know specifically if you're going to buy a home in Houston. So it's totally fine to get buyer's advice from different articles and different Instagram accounts, YouTube channels, whatever. But if they're not in Houston, these are some tips they might not give you. So if that sounds good to you, make sure that you like this video and subscribe so that you get all the information that you need on your home buying journey. So here we go, the 4 quirks of buying a home in Houston. The first one, flood zones and flood insurance. So you could call it 5 quirks, 4 quirks, whatever, but this first section, flood zones and flood insurance. The reality is that we live on the Gulf Coast. We have had several major hurricanes and tropical storms in my lifetime. I've lived through Allison, Ike, Harvey. I feel like I'm missing one. We had a surprise one this year. Was it Nicholas? Where it was like, hey, we might have a hurricane in 2 days. And that's really uncommon. And it was thankfully a minor hurricane. But we are going to have tropical storms. We're going to have hurricanes. There are even just a few times in the last 10 years that even just huge major rainstorms have caused some significant flooding. If you're going to buy a home in Houston, your real estate agent is going to help you look at what flood zone it is. You can decide whether or not you're comfortable buying a home in a flood zone. If you don't want to buy a home in a flood zone, remember, no one is a fortune teller. No one can predict where or will not flood with 100% accuracy. Just know that you want to pay attention to what flood zone the home is in. You can decide if you want to buy a home in a flood zone or not. Not even gonna lie, the corner of our yard is in a flood zone, and we bought the house even though technically the lot is in a flood zone because it's like the back corner and we live on a drainage ditch, so the home is never flooded and it's like 50 years old. You want to pay attention to the flood zones. If you are in a flood zone, then your lender is likely going to require flood insurance. So flood insurance, you basically have 2 options. 1, it's mandatory, or 2, it's not. Let's go with number 2. If it's not mandatory, I'm going to recommend it anyways. It's your choice, but this is Houston, so you get to decide. If it's mandatory, your lender is not going to provide a loan for the home without flood insurance. And flood insurance is typically going to be between $500 and up to $4,000 a year. So it could be a small chunk of change on your monthly mortgage payment or a not quite so small chunk of change on your mortgage payment, depending on what flood zone you're in and how FEMA rates your flooding risk and the cost to rebuild your home, because FEMA just totally redid all of their flooding insurance. There are now becoming more and more popular. That was a really weird sentence. Now there are becoming more popular. More and more we're seeing private flood insurance companies also offer flood insurance that are more popular as FEMA is redoing how they rate flood insurance premiums and all of that. So the one quirk you're going to have here that you're not going to have in a lot of other places like Austin, Dallas, a lot of other states is going to be the flood insurance. Flood zones, flood insurance, keep an eye on it because it can change the cost of your monthly payment. Paired with that, another thing that will fluctuate based on the home and potentially change your monthly payment is going to be property taxes. Especially if you're moving out of state, our property taxes can be a shock to you. If you're in state, it's just one of those things to know about. Texas does not have a state income tax. So, because the state government is still going to take their money, the state is going to have a property tax. And in this area, most of the property taxes that I see are between like 2.25%, 3.7, 3.8, maybe I think I've seen one that was just above 4%. So if you are buying a home that's $200,000 and it is a 2% property tax rate, which would be extremely low, that means that, right, if it's $200,000, a 2%, it's going to be $4,000 a year in property taxes. And that's typically going to be added on your monthly mortgage payment. Same house, if it's $200,000 and it is a 4% property tax, you're looking at $8,000 of property taxes. So the reason I say that is because, like, even in huge subdivisions, for instance, when I was helping someone buy in Siena, one section of Siena had like a 2.5 tax rate and another section of Siena had like a 3.5 tax rate because they had a mud tax and they didn't. So you just want to keep an eye on that, and your real estate agent and lender will really help you with that. You need to just keep an eye on those property taxes, especially if you're bumping up against the top of your pre-approval limit, because even if your lender is able to approve you for $200,000, let's say, if the property tax is at 4% and not at 2.5%, that could actually knock you out of being able to get approved for a loan for that home. So just watch your flood zones, watch your property taxes, have your real estate agent and your lender help you with both of those things. That's one of the reasons it's just so important. I know I'm biased, but bias doesn't mean it's not true. That it's just important to work with professionals who do this all the time, because you probably don't, and it's okay to not know things, because it's our job to know things. So we'll walk you through that. But two quirks of buying in Houston: flood insurance and flood zones, and property taxes. The third thing you want to know about buying a home specifically in Houston is when you're searching, there are a lot of different websites out there. What you may not know is that all of them get their information from AJRcom. So if you're looking at Zillow.com, Realtor.com, any of those other, Trulia, whatever, all of them are getting their information from AJRcom. So it's going to be better for you to just go to the source. Go to AJR.com, because sometimes what happens is when another company pulls that information to their website, it doesn't pull right. Maybe it's the wrong pictures, maybe it's the wrong address, the wrong price. AJR.com is always going to be your best bet. They have their website, they have the app. If you want to work with me, I'm a platinum agent with AJR, and one of the things that goes with that is I have an app that if you download my specific app, when you like a home, it will automatically send it to me. So we can like eliminate the back and forth of you sending me homes and wanting to set up showings. I just like flip my hair. Distraction. Anyways, that will eliminate some of that back and forth communication and make your home buying process smoother, because I can just see on the app which homes you liked. So make sure you use AJR.com, and you can leave a comment if you want to download my branded app so that you can search all throughout the Houston area. Huge area covered by AJR.com. Make sure that that is where you are searching for homes. The fourth thing to know is that in rural areas, the city and the school zone are probably the same. In a condensed space like the city of Houston and the suburbs of Houston, you're going to have a lot of crossover. For example, if you live in Pearland, depending on where you're looking with a Pearland address, you could be in Pearland ISD, you could be in Friendswood ISD, you could be in Alvin ISD, there's even some Pasadena ISD. If you're in Friendswood, that could go to Friendswood ISD, that could go to CC ISD. Thankfully, we have an amazing just system of school districts in our area. But if there's a specific one that you're looking for, don't assume that school district and city are the same thing. If you're from this area, you're a little more familiar with that. If you're moving from another part of the state or a different state, that may not be as familiar to you. I was showing a home in Pearland the other day to a buyer from out of state, and they're like, yeah, we hear XYZ school district's really good. And I'm like, well, that's great. And even though this house is in that city, it's not in that school district, it's in this school district. And I can just give you the information about different school districts so you can decide what the right fit for you is. But just know that just because it's in a certain city doesn't mean it's in a certain school district, and that information is going to be available for you on AJR.com that we just talked about. So the 4 quirks of buying a home in Houston. This is in the buyer's guide that is linked below along with a buyer's timeline and common mistakes that buyers make. The 4 quirks of buying a home in Houston is going to be 1, flood zones and flood insurance. 2, property taxes. 3, you want to use AJR.com to search for homes. And then 4, just know that city and school district don't always go hand in hand. So if those kinds of things are important to you, you want to make sure you keep an eye on that as well. I'm Melanie Beran with Wyatt Properties, myhomeinhouston.com. I hope something really great happens to you today.